Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Um, my brothers Adam and Michael we've been overwhelmed with the outpouring of love from everyone towards my mom. And I think that she would really be overwhelmed as we are. And maybe I think she'd be surprised, honestly, at at the response that at everybody who's showing up for her. So I keep on getting texts about people not being able to get in. I don't want to fall behind. We are having a few technical problems, so I hope we make it through this evening. Adam, Michael, and I, as well as Adam's three sons, Adrian, Jeremy, and Charlie, decided that we would put together a video for this evening rather than speaking individually. And we tried airing it a few minutes ago, and I hope that it will work for everybody right now. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to start by talking about my mom's early life, and it's not a happy part of her story, and it's also one that not many people know. She was born in Philadelphia in 1933, and her father, Oscar Gerber, was a shoemaker who lived at 4th and George Streets. Her mother, Jenny Gerber, died when my mom was only a year and a half old. Because of that, her older sister Sylvia and her brother Alvin were put into the foster system, and Edie was placed in the Society for Children. When she turned 3, they were reunited in a foster home in South Philly at 5th and Snyder, but it was not a good home. Mom spoke about how they were laborers in that house, cleaning and babysitting for the kids. She said they would sit at the dinner table and they would have to sit and watch everybody else eat. And when everybody else was finished, she and Alvin and Sylvie could eat whatever was left over before they washed and cleaned the place. Alvin suffered from lifelong ailments resulting from having rickets due to being malnourished at that house. But having been reunited, they put up with a lot because nothing was more important than the three of them being together with each other as family. When things were bad, my mom said Sylvie would tell her, "Don't worry, Edie, we're going to have a place of our own someday where we could just walk in and there will always be a bowl of fruit on the table." Sylvie and Alvin joined the military as soon as they could, but Edie was young and she had to stay in the home longer. When she was 16, she had enough, and she spoke back to the woman who was raising her. She was thrown out of the house and back into the foster system immediately. This summer, I was asking my mom about that moment, and I asked her if she was scared to speak back like that. And she looked at me and she said, "It felt great." Within a few days, she was moving into a house in the Northeast with a woman named Gladys and her husband. My mom said she walked in and there was fruit on the table. Gladys was showing her the house and she saw a photo of Gladys with her husband, and she immediately burst into tears because Gladys had married a man named Eddie, who my mom knew. He was this nice guy who lived 2 doors down from them in South Philly. When Eddie and Gladys had talked about getting married and having their own kids, he told her that he also wanted to foster a kid because of the terrible treatment he'd seen of the 3 kids who lived in a house in his block in South Philly. It was a total coincidence that the youngest of those kids ended up being who he and his wife actually fostered. She had a good home with Gladys and Eddie until she graduated high school, and then she moved in with Sylvia in New York City and went to college. Though these memories belong only to my mom, I'm sharing them as I feel it's a background against which we need to consider all of our memories of her. The importance to her of family, her love of fun and food, and her understanding of the importance of standing up for herself and for others who needed an advocate came from a very deep place. My mom was a warm, fierce, giving, fun-loving woman, and she was an incredible mom. She was a model for me as a progressive woman. She was a teacher, a poet, a fighter, and a gift to us all.
In terms of something about Grandma Edie, I think many people had a relationship with her where they thought of her as the gardener and all these things that she was passionate about, an educator. She was a teacher. I didn't have that experience with her. I'm young enough where I didn't know that side of her. By the time that I was old enough, she didn't have a garden anymore. She was already retired. She was still doing some work, but I didn't really know her even when she was with my grandpa. The grandma Edie that I knew, she was the matriarch of the family, and she was so unbelievably devoted to the family. And it was, to me, it was always such a strong focus of her life and our relationship. As an example, when I was very young, when my mom was teaching and wasn't able to find a way to transport me into the city, I remember grandma, she didn't drive, so she would take, an hour and a half train ride each way just to see me for an afternoon. And, it was very frequently throughout my childhood. It was very important to her that the entire family get together. We always had Thanksgiving. We always had a holiday get together. Even when it wasn't on that day, it was a running joke that we would have Thanksgiving on Sunday and we would do our gift giving in the middle of January or sometimes February, just so everyone could be involved. She really tried very hard to foster that. And I think maybe a large part of that is because she didn't have that when she was young. It meant a lot to her that she was leaving behind a family that had a really strong relationship with one another, stronger than what she had as a kid.
I will always remember the adventurous activities that Grandma had planned for us to do. The effort that went into each weekend or Sunday morning was always at the highest caliber, and quite evident that a significant level of thought went into each. Whether it be learning to cook and make pancakes with homemade blueberry sauce, to pretzels and breads, going to local theaters to catch smaller scale plays, or even seeing the Nutcracker every year. A frequent pit stop on our adventure was at Max Brenner's chocolate bar. She would say, "I'm not going to eat any chocolate this time." By the time our meal arrived, she couldn't resist and indulged with me. On that same route, we would pass by Grandpa's tree in Union Square, and she would share some of her stories with me. Other experiences were just as grand as the ones that took place in New York City. Grandma, Jenny, and I celebrated my bar mitzvah in London. She said, "When you travel, live it up." And so I saw firsthand how she, quote, lived it up. She had a passion for exploring. Her hunger for knowledge was infectious, along with her ability to share her passions. Grandma had the purest of hearts and desired nothing more than to create such unforgettable memories. And ultimately, she did just that.
Hello, my name is Michelo Piccolo, otherwise known as Michael Pikel. These are the nicknames my mom used to call me. Mom loves food. She loved family. She loved getting family together. She was very kind and compassionate, very giving. It's hard to explain, but she had this real sense of let's have fun. Sometimes out of nowhere, she just, let's go and do something. Let's just go. And she just choose something completely out of the blue, random, things she got a little kick out of it. Most people might have found annoying, like selfies. And she would make us some really great comfort food meals. My mom would make this one pot chicken Jewish meal. She made this banana bread out of all the old bananas. It was a lot of banana and coconut rum. You would smell this and you would get drunk just from smelling this stuff. And then the garden incorporated with food, growing and making our own tomato sauce, starter doughs for our sour breads. Mom loved music. I wasn't really sure how much she loved music because my dad would come home and blasting one of his favorite albums. Well, I didn't realize it until later that I guess Mom had very sensitive hearing. So there was a lot of bickering. Turn it down, Al. Turn that down, Al. So I was surprised when Mom loved music. I put on some music that I thought she might like. And it always surprised me how she would listen. One of my favorite artists, she ended up asking me to make a copy of a CD because she liked it so much. She said, "This guy is a poet." And I was shocked. And our friends loved to come to our house. Pretty much our house was a library. There were so many incredible coffee table books on art and music. And we could just sit around and each of your friends would have this book and we just talk about all kinds of cool stuff. It was an open door thing. And Mom loved when our friends came over. That's how cool Mom was. I mean, Mom was super cool.
My grandmother and I shared many common interests: folk art, theater, public parks, farmers markets. As a kid, my visits with her often involved exploring New York. Not the touristy spots, though, the real New York. She wanted me to love the city as much as she did. She often picked places in the city that she wanted to teach me to love: an exhibit at the Met, a screening at Film Forum, a repertory Shakespeare production. My grandmother never stopped fighting for what she believed in, and many of our shared experiences centered around activism. She loved Union Square Park and would enjoy walking through the park, pointing out all the areas that Mayor Bloomberg was trying to privatize, and then explaining exactly how activists, including her, would stop him. One favorite memory was in 2004 when we decided to go together to the New York City labor rally outside of the Republican National Convention. She was proud to stand with the U of T contingent, but was even prouder to show up to protest Bush's anti-worker policies. When she moved to Pennsylvania, I assumed she might give up her activism. But within just a couple of months, she was already volunteering with Fair Districts PA on their campaign to end gerrymandering in Pennsylvania. Most of our conversations started or ended with an activism check-in. She would ask me about my activism and I'd ask about hers. She would cut out articles in the paper that related to these conversations. Most of the time, a letter in the mail from my grandmother featured a hand-selected curation of articles I was expected to read. I grew to appreciate the love and time she spent carefully thinking about who would find similar enjoyment from an article she had read.
They say that money doesn't grow on trees, but for Mom, her investments of love, care, and time paid off. When Mom was 10, living in South Philly, she wrote that she would wade through a church's meadow-like high weeds and search for seasonal discoveries of low-growing seasonal dandelions, climbing poison ivy, and blue morning glories, yellow asters, and giant sunflowers, flat-topped clusters of yellow-centered yarrow, and coveted four-leaf clovers. Her boyfriend at the time, David, couldn't keep his hands off the plants, and maybe because she was in love, but she fell in love with the plants, despite the fact that David ran off with another girl. Growing up in Brooklyn, my early memories include the various houseplants she had. There were plants on the floor around the windows. Spider plants hung from the ceiling in pots, their mother plant shooting offspring that dangled in the air and in numbers that cascaded down towards the floor. She got a Dieffenbachia when she married Dad, and she always said it was up to all of us to keep it or its cuttings alive. No matter how many times she showed me how to make cuttings from it, I couldn't do it. Now I have to, without her. She took classes at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens in the 60s and parlayed that knowledge into her wildflower garden in Putnam Valley. She loved spending time in the garden. It was a respite from her motherly responsibilities at the time. But she was a mother to her plants and flowers too, planting the seed, nurturing them, watching them grow. She was proud of her plants and flowers. When Dad was into macro photography, he focused on her flower garden, and he fell in love with them as a subject. She would strap her knee pads on and go out and pull the weeds for hours because it kept them strong and presented them better. Weeding in the rain, I found, was best because the ground was softer. At the time, I didn't understand why anybody would want to go out in the rain and pull weeds for hours on their hands and knees, but I understand now. After a fire burned out my room in 1976, I had just about nothing left. When I got a new room with a big window, Mom took me to a nursery, and I thought the cacti were cool, so she bought a few for my window. We bonded over that. In Mamaroneck a few years later, her plants were mostly bushes. She knew all the varieties of each one, which one was better because it had red berries in October, and the way she even described that with so much enthusiasm. With the numerous aspects of Mom's life, it may sound simple to speak about her love for plants and gardening, but it was something that gave her joy. On what would have been her next birthday, June 30th, J.U., Adrian, Jeremy, Charlie, and I will be planting an ornamental tree by our door to celebrate her love for the garden. It will be something we see every day, and I look forward to the joy I get from it, and will always remember a beautiful and simple side of my mom that I admire. Anyone who wants to feel a bit of Edie's joy might want to get a plant, a flower, a tree, or even a cactus and give it your attention and love. You might find it satisfying, as my mom did.
So we actually have some folks who are going to be speaking as well. Some of them are having trouble getting in, unfortunately. But the first folks up will be Carl and Susan. And Carl and Susan, I think that you can unmute yourselves.
Good evening. I'm Carl Sabbath, Al Shanker's son by his first marriage. I did not grow up with Adam, Jenny, and Michael. For many years, I did not see my dad. But when I was young and was able to visit, Edie never saw me as just Al's kid or that other woman's child whom she wanted nothing to do with. She always wanted me to be part of things and part of Al's life. Her bridge building of family ties continued in my 20s after I reconnected with my dad. She could not have been more supportive and encouraging of regaining my dad in my life, and mine and his. Everything to include my wife Susan and me in Shanker family gatherings, she did. She showed love, interest, and generosity to her son Noah and support during trying parenting times.
In the 23 years since Al's death, our relationship with Edie grew, and so too our relationships with Carl's siblings and their children. We saw her whenever she came to DC, and we visited her in New York and one time in Pennsylvania. I will miss her radiant smile and wonderful laugh. Our conversations about poetry, politics, books, art, family over cups of warm tea. On Rosh Hashanah, she departed, which in Jewish tradition is the holiest of times to die and reserved for those who have devoted their lives to pursuing justice and goodness. Edie has left us all a legacy of devotion to good causes, to love of family, and a model of pure humility. Gratitude and grief are felt in equal measure. This poem in honor of Edie, late fragment by Ray Carver. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. That was beautiful. Next is Miriam Harris. Are you in the room? Miriam Boatsam?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so here's my cousin Miriam and my dad's sister Pearl.
So my mom asked me to read what I had helped her to write, her memories of Edie. So these are her words. Edie was a very loving person. Over the years, we shared almost everything that happened in our lives, both concerns and the positive parts of our lives. From early on, she felt more like a sister to me than a sister-in-law. As our children were growing up, we used to visit over school breaks every year so that the cousins could get to know each other. And while Al was usually working during much of the visit, Edie always made time to spend with me and the children. Aside from the visits, for the last 50 plus years, we spoke with each other at least once a week until the last month or so when she didn't have the energy. And even then, we spoke a few times before her passing. When I moved to Pennsylvania back in February, I had hoped that we might see each other in person, but the pandemic prevented those visits. Other people will speak tonight about her accomplishments and her contributions, but I will always remember her as a loving sister-in-law and a caring aunt to my children.
Pearl, thank you so much. Thank you, Miriam, for reading that. Jay Gordon, did you make it into the room here tonight?
I sure did. Can you hear me, Jenny?
Yeah, so everybody, Jay is my cousin. He's my mom's sister's eldest son.
Thank you, Jenny. How do you speak about someone for just 1 or 2 minutes when that person was the very first person to hold you as a newborn infant. I have that picture of Aunt Edie cradling me in her arms like aunts do and looking down, just adoring me. And when I look at that picture and I think of her, that to me is how she felt about her family. She just adored her family, and she adored getting us all together. In the early years, her brother, Uncle Alvin, would drive me, my brother Rusty, and my mom to Putnam Valley, and then later to Mamaroneck, where we would play all day with Adam and Jenny and Michael, while she and Uncle Al would prepare a big dinner for us. Now, I really don't think she loved Uncle Al's stereo and that blasting music. Like Michael said earlier, I can still hear her screaming, "Al, please turn down that music." But I can tell you, she just loved having us all together. In later years, us cousins grew up and moved away, and she moved to the city. But trust me when I tell you, there were no logistics too complicated to negotiate that would dissuade her from insisting we all gather. I'd come in from the West Coast and she would mobilize, dare I say, organize everyone, and somehow we would all find a way. Her family was her joy, and make no mistake, she was the center of our family. Over the years, my kids, my wife Judy, and many of Judy's sisters and brothers had met her. Invariably, after getting to know her, no one would really refer to her as your Aunt Edie. They always referred to her as Aunt Edie. They became, in a sense, a part of her family too. We all adored her, and we will miss her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. Susan Drennan. Hoping Susan made it into the room. I think I saw her husband's name. Paul, I'm going to unmute you. I see Paul in the room. Paul, you're going to have to unmute yourself, it looks like. Why don't we do this? Walter.
We're unmuted.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
Yes.
Okay. Susan is a very, very dear friend of my mom's from when we were way back, starting when we were living in Putnam Valley. Go ahead, Susan.
50 years ago, I had the grand good fortune of meeting the wise and profound Eadie Shanker. We had an affinity for one another, and so our friendship was the perfectly natural and inevitable result. We cherished one another's hopes. We were kind to each other's dreams. As the years passed, we developed an undeniably unique friendship that was always fresh, imaginative, absorbing, and delightful. It seems to have been the natural product of her personality that was loyal, affectionate, selfless, and forever charming. I responded to her fine and thoughtful vision. She adored her children, Adam, Jenny, and Michael, and there was no mistaking her enthusiasm for my children, Matthew and Maureen. A friend is one who incessantly pays us the compliment of expecting from us all the virtues and who can appreciate them in us. Edie never failed in this regard. She was a marvelously humane person, and we were both rewarded in terms of pure pleasure just to be together. When her grandchildren, Adrian, Jeremy, Olivia, and Charlie came along, she treated them with even-handedness and the rare combination of fresh thought, fresh style, and exemplary candor. Edie and I always treated our entirely reciprocal emotions with sincerest respect. And oh, how we laughed. With her megawatt smile, her lyrical, funny, and delightful nature, and her keen gee whiz observations, we never, ever failed to love being together. Her personality was permeated with irresistible, authentic magic. Edie, we all miss you. Thank you for being such a marvelous and beloved person.
Thank you so much, Susan. Is Angelo, are you here? I'm looking through the list. No, Angelo. Walter?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful.
Edie Gerber Shanker was a woman of great integrity and strong principles. She was fiercely loyal to and protective of her family and friends, and I consider myself lucky to have been one of the latter. And as our friendship grew, Edie treated me like a member of the family, often including me in holiday gatherings and other family events. She was a warm and compassionate friend, generous with her time, and a force for good. I first met Edie through Al, a good friend and colleague of my partner in the struggle for labor and civil human rights, Bayard. We didn't see each other often during those early years, as Edie was still very involved in family life in Mamaroneck. But after the kids left the nest and we lost both Al and Bayard, we developed a friendship based on shared values, but also on a deep appreciation for the arts and the love of travel. A few years after Bayard died, I accompanied Al, Edie, Yetta, Bella Rosenberg, and Eric Chenoweth to Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and what was then still Leningrad. It was a memorable trip, given that it was an exciting time in Prague with candlelight marches for freedom taking place. Al had been invited to meet with trade union activists. After several days in Leningrad, we were very anxious to return home, and Al arranged for a flight out of Helsinki. In the darkness of night, we departed in a minivan, driving through the bleak countryside until we reached the border of Russia and Finland. Unfortunately, we arrived about 2 hours before the border opening, so we spent a chilly and somewhat damp time telling stories and laughing about our experiences. With Al's death, Edie spent more time in New York City and gradually divested herself of the property in Westchester. She asked me to help her arrange their wonderful collection of African masks on one wall of the apartment and work with her on setting up a garage sale in Mamaroneck. While doing that work, we would invariably reminisce, recounting stories provoked by a particular object and bonding over shared memories. We traveled to Turkey together in 2000, part of a small group that took a bus tour through the historic locations and natural wonders of that ancient region. Edie was the most gregarious of the group, making new friends and sometimes venturing off with me to explore the markets of Istanbul. Edie loved jazz, particularly big band performances from the 40s, and we were subscribers to the long-running Highlights in Jazz series at Pace University. Sometimes we were joined by retired teacher Maggie Glotzer, both at the jazz series and at the People's Symphony concerts at Washington Irving High School. When Maggie suffered a severe stroke and needed to reside in a skilled nursing facility, Edie and I would go together to visit once a week for several years, sometimes sharing dinner afterwards. Edie was a loyal and caring friend, particular to her colleagues at the UFT, especially those who were part of the founding of the union. Although Edie and I bonded together through our love of the arts, we also worked together on a few political and community-based campaigns, most notably the effort to prevent Union Square Park from privatization. Edie's organizational skills and her tenacity helped to secure several victories for the residents of the neighborhood, as well as serving as a reminder about the historical importance of Union Square to labor movement history. Loyalty and love defined Edie's character, and a toughness that was softened with kindness and compassion. All of these qualities have been passed on to her children and grandchildren, and I know how proud she was of all of them. May they continue to carry on her light.
Walter, thank you so much. We wanted to show an old video of my mom, and then there's also a video that George Altamari made. George is from the UFT, and George's mother worked with my dad's mother in sweatshops back in the day. And then George and my dad worked from the very earliest days together organizing. So let me switch to that video.
Edie, don't you have gloves? Edie?
Is he ready?
Yeah.
Mr. Shanker, what happened here today?
I came to visit my husband. Today is a visiting day, and I rang the bell, and one of the men inside, the officers, came and said that today is a holiday, there's no visiting. I don't understand it. I later found out this is a correction officer. I don't understand why I'm not able to visit him on a regular visiting day. I wasn't given any information. I wasn't advised of this. Yesterday when I was here on another visiting day from 1 to 3, the lawyer, Mr. Kolodny, was not advised of this last week when he was given the ground rules. The sign here does not say that there's no visiting on holidays. And from a very hasty call I was allowed to make at 11 o'clock just as I was leaving. He was still uncertain as to whether I would be able to, and other families would be able to visit them, the men inside. Still was uncertain as to whether this rule would apply or not today. So I questioned where this rule came from, and I still would like to know why I'm not allowed to visit Al on a visiting day.
I see your arms are full of Christmas gifts.
Well, they're not necessarily Christmas gifts. We celebrate Hanukkah for the children, which starts on Wednesday, but we do exchange holiday presents, and I was bringing some things that the children selected from their own belongings this morning that they thought their daddy would find use for or enjoy in jail. Michael just 2.5 sent his favorite book, The Little Engine That Could, and we put some kisses on the outside of it from Michael. And Jenny sent her telephone and told me to write that she wants Daddy to call her more often. And Adam, who's able to, just barely able to write now, he's in 1st grade, selected a few his words to write to his daddy and asked me to write some other things on the outside of the package. He sent his favorite leaf collection, which we compiled during the summer, and there's a project kit pamphlet inside, and he said, I think Daddy might find this useful, maybe he'll have something to do inside. And as a matter of fact, if he had the materials, he would find it useful.
Will you try to come in next Monday, even if you don't make it this Monday?
Yes, I have received no official information that I should not be able to visit him on a visiting day.
Welcome to the...
Mr. Shanker, how do you feel now, Mrs. Shanker?
Oh, very happy, very happy.
Welcome to the celebration of the life of Edie Gerber Shanker. I first want to thank the family, especially the three children, Adam, Michael, and Jenny, for sharing the celebration of their mother, who was a founder of the New York City Teachers Guild, Local 2, AFT. Often they would refer to Edie Shanker as Al's wife. I never did that, and I asked others to hear what I was saying, and that is to introduce Edie first as what she was, a founder of the UFT, a legitimate founder, and a person who was influenced tremendously by Al Shanker and the militants, and had her own involvement in creating something that was unique, a teachers union that was overwhelmingly the majority of educators in the country. Edie was a volunteer to an organization within the UFT called the Network, and it was something that I chaired and was very happy to influence and gain Edie Shanker. Edie Shanker was extremely active in various community projects, such as keeping and maintaining Washington Irving concert series, which were fantastic and of high quality. She also was active in other labor unions, where she was helping on their reading programs for immigrants and young workers who were immigrants. One of the biggest community successes that Edie Shanker had was the saving of Union Square Park as a park, non-commercialized, and she was able to recruit all those of us, the young activists and the older ones like myself, who would go and help her on this community cause besides the UFT cause. And at that point, we were able to leaflet, picket, talk to legislators, and saved Union Square Park, a historic feat. We had the merger to create the 1960 organization of UFT, and there were many who were against that. But Edie Shanker was not only for it, but maintained a position in favor of it, and we did have the merger to create the 1960 UFT, and that is what earned the right to call Edie Gerber Shanker a founder of the UFT. So we have the strike network that was used on our first strikes, and Edie was a member of the various other organizations that stem from us, not only the UFT, but also the AFT, NYSET, and the Central Labor Council, AFL-CIO. When Al Shanker and Edie Gerber Shanker were married, they asked me to be a chuppah holder, which I was. I was very proud of and very thankful that they gave me that honor. And of course, I might not have put the right huh in the chuppah holder, but I did try my best, and they were legally married because of my huh. So at any rate, I just hope that the best happens for all of us, and we get through what we're going through today. What's most important at this moment is to celebrate the beautiful life of Edie Gerber Shanker.
Thank you, George. I noticed, I think that Angelo was able to get into the room. Angelo, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you. It's with my deepest sympathies to Edie's family and friends. I know she'll be missed. I would like to thank you and your family, Jenny, for allowing me to say a few words about Edie. 20 years ago, I became Edie's accountant. Over that time, our business relationship flourished to a personal one. Thank you in the email before, Jenny, for referring to me as Edie's accountant and unofficially adopted family member. I accept that title with honor. In Edie's eyes, we were mashpaka. In my eyes, we were familia. Either way, the meaning is the same. Edie had many jobs over her life. Her most important job was being a mom. She cared very deeply for her family and worried very much about them. This caring and concern also overlapped to her close friends, whom she made feel like family. This best describes our relationship. Our phone calls would begin on a business note and would end discussing families and friends. We often joked. I would tell her some really corny jokes. We would laugh or groan, whichever reaction the joke warranted. Every so often, Edie would send me a joke book. I think this was her way of telling me that I needed new material. We were in constant contact about her finances and tax situations. Every year in May, we had a date to go over her prior year. Her commitment to understanding the complexities of her taxes were admirable. She was organized and very detail-oriented and always wanted things in order. During our meeting, the morning was all business. We would conclude the day with a fantastic lunch. It did not matter where we went because the company and conversation was always good, and Edie would always pick a very special place. I will miss our conversations and working together and can truly say Edie had a tremendous impact in my life. I look forward to continuing my role as unofficially adopted family member. Thank you, and Edie will surely be missed. Love you, Edie.
Angela, thank you so much. It looks like we're able to get more than 100 people in the room now, so hopefully some other people will still come in. The next person we have is, unless if Jeff Croft was able to get in. Is Jeff here? Then the next person up would be it would be Andrew Plata, president of the New York State United Teachers. Andrew, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Michael Mulgrew called me to say he couldn't get into the room, but he sends his warm regards and his fond memories of Edie. He said she was always encouraging to him and always a we, never a me. That's what he remembered, and that she lived a good life. And for us at NYSUT, every time you walk into the NYSUT building, you're reminded of the Shanker family, whether it's the room that is dedicated to the Shankers or Edie's picture on the Not For Ourselves Alone wall that we have. It is just a beautiful, beautiful experience to see that. And I've spoken to her several times in my life and always an encouragement. So on behalf of the NYSUT officers, our staff, our membership, we are honored to be able to speak about our admiration for her and for her life. Thank you.
Andy, thank you so much. And I feel so bad that Michael couldn't.
Nope, Michael made it.
Michael made it.
My wife kept trying and she finally got in, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, you're up.
Well, first I want to thank my wife Emma for keep trying, and because that's how this stuff works, isn't it? I never knew Edie before I became president, and the first time I was in a meeting, she grabbed me gently by the back of my hand and just pulled me down and spoke to me. And from then on, every time we saw each other, we would speak. And she was always very concerned about me. She always said, I understand the stress and the pressure. I understand the stress and the pressure. And she was always concerned about children, about the Shanker Scholarship Fund. If you look at what she did throughout her career, literacy programs for adults, always concerned about how to help others. And that's the Edie I always knew, because that's what she did with me. She never asked me for anything. She was always asking me if I was okay, what I could do. At times when we were going through some difficult problems as a union, she would give me anecdotes. And just to open herself up like that, to me, showed me what a special person she was. So I don't know, and I can just imagine her first day when she walked into school in Queens, and when she walked into PS 126, because I always remember the first day I walked into a school and what I thought. And then you think back and say, what actually happened from that day on? And for your mother, that was one amazing journey. She changed so many people's lives, and she always made it about others and never about herself. And to you as a family, I thank you for sharing your mother with us. She meant a lot to me personally in a very, very, very quiet way. She helped me through a lot of really difficult portions, especially when I first became president. So I just go back to, I'm sure, that day she walked into PS 126 to just recently, I would clearly say, Edie Shanker lived a very good life, and we're all the better for it. So thank you, and thank you all so much.
Michael, thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you're doing right now. I can't even begin to imagine how you had this time, but we really appreciate you being here and everything that you're doing. Randy Weingarten is with us as well. Randy, are you still with us?
I am, Jeannie. I think Michael and I kept on doing the push, 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 but I'm so glad that Michael and Andy are here. And I'm so glad that there are so many people on the Zoom from UFT and AFT family, family from generation to generation. And you see that in terms of the Zoom. You see that in terms of people who are, were and are close to Al and close to Edie. You see, I see Rochelle here. Walter spoke. You see that from the UFT people like Paula. You see what, Michael said. But Jeannie, your family, you, Adam, Michael, Carl, your mom's grandkids, Adrian, who we know and was helping us get on the Zoom too. It's very hard to not see the Shankers and the AFT and the UFT as one. And I am so glad George talked about your mom as part of the founding of the AFT, of the UFT, not just as your father and not just as Al's wife, but that group of people. And I'm so grateful that I heard some of those stories before Al died. I've heard those stories from George. I feel sometimes like I am a bridge between past and future. But that group of people, including your mom, they did not know what would happen. But the values of both teaching and unionism was so ingrained in them, and they built something, and you see it in terms of the UFT now, from generation to generation. You see what the UFT does now, but that was built by that group of people. not only walking into schools, but understanding, as Abe Levine used to say, and Sandy and your father used to say, teachers want what children need, and meant it. And your mom did that for all of her life. I watched the special last night because I don't sleep anymore, of the First Ladies and of Michelle Obama talking about how family was going to be her first pursuit while she was First Lady. And I thought about your mom, and I thought about what it meant, particularly in light of the strikes and jail and all of this, and all of the friction and the issues that were going on in New York at that time, and how she not only supported Al, but she supported all of you. And frankly, as Michael just said, she supported all of us. I will not ever forget when Al was in his last few weeks, he asked that I come see him. And the love that your mom had, and the, like Michael said, the understanding of what that generational change and what Al's death was going to mean, not only to her, not only to your family, but to the greater UFT and AFT family, and the responsibilities that would then be thrust on Sandy, myself, others. She understood, and she was always there. She saw it. You felt it in her smile. You felt it in her hug. You saw all of us felt very supported by Edie Shanker. And I love that she continued to work with kids. And I love that she continued to work as an active UFT retiree. But all of us, and I speak for the 1.7 million members, many of whom did not know her. I speak for the staff, for the officers of both the UFT and the AFT. We all had that shoulder to rely upon for so many years. That smile, that knowing acknowledgement that this little club that Andy and Michael and I belong to, she understood, and she always supported us. And it is so great that Jenny is part of the union in Philadelphia, now part of the staff. This generation to generation thing that we go through about understanding what a union means, what community work means, having a little bit of fun as part of it, having a little joy as part of it. My wife often says joy is an act of resistance and despair is not a strategy. And to the Shanker family and to the AFT and the UFT family, that is what Edie taught us all the time as well. Her memory is a blessing. I'm grateful that I knew her. I'm grateful that I have known and have had moments to be with your family. We all owe her a debt of gratitude. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a little overwhelmed by all of this. Maybe, I don't know if Michael and Adam, if you just want to turn on your microphones just for a second, just to say thank you and hello to everybody. I mean, we're near the end of our time right now. And I know that Michael and Adam and I and the grandkids were all happy to stick around after the 8 o'clock hour for anyone. I saw one or two people in the chat who said they might want to say something, but we did say we're going to end at 8, and I know that there are some people who have a lot of things to do right now. Michael and Adam, you guys just want to chime in just for a second before 8 o'clock hits?
Michael goes first.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and helping us celebrate my mom's life. She would have been thrilled. And I think this means the world to myself and our family. So thank you for your kind words.
Michael said exactly what I was going to say, so I don't have to say anymore. But I'm sorry that more people that wanted to join couldn't join, and I'm sure that somehow this is recorded and we'll make it available to people who couldn't be here. And thank you, everybody, for coming and sharing our mom's memorial.
This has been recorded, and maybe we can find a way to share it. And I just want to also say thank you to everybody. We love you. It's amazing to see people from throughout my parents' life, throughout all of our lives individually, all coming together here on this little screen. And I know it's in my living room. It's really quite an amazing thing. And my mom would have been overwhelmed. I wish she could be here to hear, to be with all of you, to be with all of us, and to hear the things that are being said about her. I'm not sure that she always felt it. I hope she's feeling it now. Thank you all once again. And for those who need to leave, again, thanks for being here. Those who want to stay, we can stick around for a little while. Do I see, for those who are staying, did Jeffrey make it into the room? Jeff Croft?
I saw him on the screen at one point.
I thought I did too. Jeff, are you in the room? You have to unmute your mic.
Croft is in the room.
Jeff, I'm so sorry you had such grief getting in. Would you like to step in at this moment?
No, of course not, but I will. I just, I am overwhelmed. It was interesting talking about the playing it forward stuff, and Randy, you were helpful. Edie was an integral part of my life for many, many years, and all in this family that you guys are talking about. Randy, you were helpful on our Randall's Island fight with Laney, and helping secure legal representation. And people don't always make these connections, and I lived it every day. I grew up in the South Bronx in District 9, and my mom was a single mom raising 3 kids, and I never realized this stuff was just, I lived it. I didn't even think about it. So when I came upon Edie Shanker, it was pretty remarkable for many reasons. And it's great to see Walter's face. I had never really, I was doing things in the advocacy world that was extremely difficult. And when I met Edie, I didn't realize that there was actually there was rhyme and reason, and there was people can actually organize in the way that she did. We would go to these meetings, and Robert's rules, not growing up with so-called Robert's rules, I was just, she would just get so aggravated, or people interrupting and being rude. And so the next meeting, she not only brought one copy of it, but she brought enough for everybody. And this was a new world in organization for me. And I just the Union Square battle, trying to preserve a historical place That went on for about 10 years. I mean, people don't realize how long this stuff takes. And when you have administrations that refuse to deal with, the desires and the needs of its citizenry, it's very frustrating. And Edie was just, such a powerful voice. But she was so incredibly humble. And matter of fact, the only fights we ever got into in all those years were, she didn't like to public speak. She was just so nervous. And, it was just an extraordinary time for me to spend that time around her. I mean, countless hours on the phone and eating meals together. It was just a beautiful thing. And the way she talked about her family. And I mean, what she did with, she brought in George. I mean, there was this crazy battle in Union Square, and she literally turned the entire board of this organization, the Union Square Community Organization, around. I remember having this phone call with her. I didn't even want to, it was an impossible thing. And she went in like the ABCs of union organizing. And, I was so used to not getting any help on anything. So she was this magical person. And she would talk about these things as if it was like, drinking water. It was the air that she breathed. And she liked the fight, no doubt about that. But she never forgot the people who wronged her, which I liked. She demanded accountability, and there's so few human beings that in my world, in my work, that felt so strongly about that. And I love that about her. And she was on, the right side of the angels, and she saw no reason to forget. If the people were not doing the right thing. So it warms my heart to, be around this world, even if it's for a few minutes with all of you guys. And, her impact, and obviously Al's, will be felt for generations to come. And that's not hyperbole. And I think people forget that. We had a great conversation a couple of years ago in New York Times, on the front page of the New York Times. A writer had opined, where is Al Shanker when we need him? And it was great. We had such a great conversation the next day about that, because there's so few people, that have this this extraordinary, principles. And I said to Jenny, and she was my partner in crime, in the park advocacy world. She was just the most dedicated person. And I obviously, your family knows that. And I loved her, and so I want to thank you guys for sharing her with the younger generation. I've never learned so much from someone in my life from a work perspective. And she was a great friend. One time I was sick. She lives, again, 3rd Avenue, 25th Street. One time I had a cold. She came up with her shopping cart and left not a small thing of homemade chicken noodle soup. She left like a gallon of it. And I'm like, I was like, this is amazing, so, her love will continue to impact this world and your family. And I know it's a huge sacrifice that families make for people who are this principled and who are guided by their values. So I want to thank the family and all of our friends, the friends, for allowing that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I know she had a heck of a lot of fun working with you guys. You did so much good. I thought maybe I'd play the slideshow again while if other people want to speak. Somebody, Francine, if Francine's still here.
I'm here, Jenny. Thank you. It's a privilege to be on, and Edie was so gracious to me. I didn't play a big role in her life, but she made me feel like I did. I was so fortunate to have a few wonderful conversations with her during my time with AFT. I took off from the bookshelves behind me, Tough Liberal, and in here she wrote a beautiful note to Dal, how inspired Al was by Dal to promote peer review, for which all teachers owe a debt. And she was so accomplished in her own right. And I think tonight, Randy mentioned the AFT family. And as I see who has signed on, Randy, Sandy, Greg, Phil, Alan, Rita, Andy, Rochelle, Jeff, Matt, Michael, Edie, you brought so many of us together online, and that is special. Thank you so much for all you did on our behalf.
Thank you so much. Tom Murphy.
You know, as the chair of the UFT Retired Teachers Chapter, we've lost another giant, and I was the political director for Randy and Sandy for 16 years, and then I've been the RTC chapter leader since 2009, and your mom interacted intermittently but persistently with me in both capacities, and it was always about something to help other people, a concern for Abe Levine or a concern for anybody. One time she wanted me to help organize, I think it was either some janitors or some building workers who were not getting a good representation, and I went to the Central Labor Council for her and things along that line. I just love the fact that in the last days, you know, she was really campaigning to end the national nightmare and to organize people for Trump, against Trump, you know. So she was just very special. She was very kind, very engaging, and very persistent. And she was a great lady. And I just wanted to, for the Retired Teachers Chapter, pay tribute to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wendy Wasserman, are you here?
I am. Hi, Jenny. Can you see me?
Hi, Wendy.
It's so lovely to see you. Heartbreakingly lovely to see all three of you. So I'm sitting here in the dark outside in my house. And the reason is because this is the memory I have of both your parents. Our parents, for those of you who don't know, my parents, Herb and Cece Wasserman, my sisters are on the line as well. And Eadie and Al seem to have a magical open door policy where they always showed up at our house, and somehow my parents would disappear to your house, and we were all mixed and mingled. And I would say between my sisters and I and the three of you, probably the six of us got in more trouble than we should probably admit. But more than anything, I just wanted to thank you all, because I love seeing these pictures, because it not only reminds me of Edie, but it reminds me of that open door policy that I think both our mothers and our fathers instilled in us. So to that, I want to just raise a drink to all of us and say thank you. Thank you to our mothers.
Cheers to CC too.
Jenny?
Yes.
This is Jeanette.
Oh, Jeanette.
Yeah, hi. I, of course, want to offer my sympathy to the family. My memories of your mom started in Brooklyn, and when she had a house around the corner from where I lived, and we somehow got together because probably it had to do with our kids being at least Adam and my son Alex being in PS 179, and we kind of just had this feeling immediately when we met that we could be friends. And I remember I just wanted to say one thing about knowing that everyone is talking about how kind and sympathetic she was. When I had, I did lose a little contact, of course, when she moved upstate, but we kept in touch, you know, writing on cards or little letters here and there. And I had some memories of being with her and when she was in New York and visiting her in her apartment there, and going to Philadelphia and seeing Jenny and her together and doing a little tour of Philadelphia. But to just go to her kindness and sympathetic nature. There's when my daughter Adrian was killed. She was living upstate, and I was still in Brooklyn, and she made a trip down to my house, and she said to me, you know, that she wanted to, you know, come down and see me and offer her condolences. But then she said, come on out. We have to do something to cheer you up a little bit. And she said, let's go to the movies. And we went, she took me to the movies. And I'm trying to remember it was that, I remember the movie. I sort of remember. I can't come up with the name of the movie, but I remember us sitting there with her, and I was so sedated with all the tranquilizers that was given that I think I slept through half of it. But I felt that was so kind of her to come down, and I'm sorry that when she moved away, I didn't have the contact that I would have liked to have had with her. But every time we got together, it was like we were never apart. And I just wanted to mention that. I'm sorry that she's gone, and won't have a chance to speak to her again. But just wanted to say a few words.
Thank you, everybody, again for showing up to celebrate our mom's life. And we love you all, and this has been really an incredible evening. So thank you.